A woman's scream cut through Wonderful Tonight at Madison Square Garden. Eric Clapton stopped playing. Paramedics were rushing through the crowd. A father had collapsed. His 12-year-old son was crying over him. The father's last words before losing consciousness: "Please, let me hear the rest of the song with my boy." What Clapton did next stopped 20,000 hearts. It was October 12, 2010, at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Eric Clapton was performing the second night of a 3-show residency at one of the world's most iconic venues. The crowd of 20,000 was swaying to Wonderful Tonight, phones held up, couples embracing, everyone lost in one of rock's most romantic songs. But in section 104, row 8, seats 3 and 4, something beautiful and terrible was happening simultaneously. Thomas Bradley, 43 years old, sat with his arm around his 12-year-old son Michael, both singing along softly, lost in a moment that had defined their relationship for the past 12 years. Thomas didn't know he had less than 3 minutes to live, but somehow his heart knew. This was the last song, the last moment, the last time he'd hold his son while music played. The story of Thomas and Michael Bradley and their song began 12 years earlier on a different October night, October 15, 1998. Thomas Bradley stood at the altar in a small church in Brooklyn, watching his bride Jennifer walk down the aisle. The song playing was Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton. Thomas had chosen it carefully. It wasn't just a love song to him, it was a promise. Wonderful Tonight meant I see you, I cherish you, you are enough. It was the song that would define his marriage and later his fatherhood. When Michael was born in 1998, the first song Thomas played for him in the hospital room was Wonderful Tonight. As Michael grew from infant to toddler to child, Thomas would sing it to him every single night before bed. No matter how tired Thomas was, no matter what had happened that day, he would sit on the edge of Michael's bed and sing. It's time to go home now, and I've got an aching head. So darling, I love you. Oh, how I love you. Michael would drift off to sleep to his father's voice singing Clapton's words. It became their ritual, their language. When words were too hard, when Michael was scared or Thomas was stressed, they would just hum the melody to each other. It meant, I'm here, I love you, we're okay. By 2010, when Michael was 12, Wonderful Tonight had been played or sung in the Bradley household thousands of times. It was at Michael's baptism. It played on family road trips. Thomas whistled it while making breakfast. It was the soundtrack of their family. But in early 2010, Jennifer Bradley noticed something wrong with Thomas. He was tired all the time, shortness of breath, occasional chest pains he dismissed as stress from his job as a construction foreman. Jennifer begged him to see a doctor. Thomas kept putting it off. I'm fine, just getting old. I'm 43, not 23 anymore. But he wasn't fine. Thomas Bradley had an undiagnosed congenital heart condition that was slowly killing him. His heart was a time bomb, and nobody knew. In September 2010, Jennifer gave Thomas an ultimatum. See a doctor or I'm leaving you. Michael needs a father who takes care of himself. Thomas finally made an appointment for October 20th, 2010, 1 week after Eric Clapton's concert at Madison Square Garden. He never made it to that appointment. On October 10th, 2010, Michael came home from school excited. Dad, Eric Clapton is playing Madison Square Garden on Tuesday. Can we go? Please? It's our song. We have to hear him play our song live.
Thomas looked at the ticket prices. $250 for decent seats. Money the family didn't really have. But seeing the hope in Michael's eyes, the excitement, the connection between them that Wonderful Tonight represented, Thomas bought the tickets. Section 104, row 8, seats 3 and 4. $400 he charged to a credit card they were trying to pay off. Jennifer was furious when she found out. They fought. We can't afford this, Thomas. We have bills. It's our song, Jen. I need to hear it live with Michael, just once. I need that memory with my son. You're being ridiculous. It's just a song. But it wasn't just a song. Not to Thomas, not to Michael. It was everything. On October 12, 2010, Thomas and Michael took the subway from Brooklyn to Manhattan. Michael wore his best shirt. Thomas wore the same shirt he'd worn at his wedding. It still fit, barely. They talked about what songs Clapton would play, whether he'd play Wonderful Tonight, what it would be like to hear it live. "Dad," Michael asked on the subway, "why is this our song?" Thomas thought for a moment. "Because it's about seeing someone completely, not just looking at them, but really seeing them. When I sing it to you, I'm saying I see how wonderful you are every night. You are wonderful, Michael, every single night." Michael hugged his father on the crowded subway car. Thomas held him tight, not knowing it was one of the last hugs he'd ever give. When they arrived at Madison Square Garden, the energy was electric. 20,000 Eric Clapton fans filling the legendary venue. Thomas and Michael found their seats. Not great, but close enough. They could see Clapton clearly. That was enough. For the first hour of the concert, Thomas and Michael were in heaven. Every song was a gift. Layla, Cocaine, Tears in Heaven. They sang along, they swayed, they lived in the music together. Thomas felt a pain in his chest around the 45-minute mark. Sharp, different from the usual aches. He ignored it. He wasn't going to let anything ruin this moment with Michael. Then, around 9:30 p.m., Clapton walked to his microphone and said the words Thomas had been waiting to hear all night. "This next song is one I wrote for my wife many years ago. It's called Wonderful Tonight." The crowd erupted. Michael grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, it's our song! It's happening!" Thomas pulled Michael close, his arm around his son's shoulders. As Clapton began playing the opening chords, Thomas started singing softly along, just like he did every night at bedtime. "It's late in the evening, she's wondering what clothes to wear." Michael leaned into his father, both of them swaying to the music, surrounded by 20,000 people, but feeling completely alone together in their moment. Thomas felt another pain, sharper, radiating down his arm. His vision blurred for a second. He squeezed Michael tighter. "Dad, are you okay?" Michael whispered. "I'm perfect, buddy. This is perfect. Just listen to the song." They made it through the first verse and chorus. Clapton's guitar work was masterful. The whole arena was swaying, lighters held up, couples embracing, perfect romantic concert moment. Then, during the second verse, Thomas Bradley's heart stopped. Not slowly, not with warning, it just stopped. 1 second he was singing, "And then she asks me, do I look all right?" And the next second he slumped forward, his full weight falling onto Michael. "Dad?" Michael's voice was confused at first, not scared. "Dad, what are you doing?" Thomas didn't respond. His body was slack, heavy, not breathing. "Dad!" Michael screamed. "Dad, wake up!" The woman sitting next to them, Caroline Martinez, looked over. One glance at Thomas, and she knew. She started screaming, "Help! Someone help! This man is having a heart attack!" The music continued. Most of the arena couldn't hear over Clapton's performance, but their section erupted in chaos. People standing, pointing, someone running for security. Michael was crying, shaking his father. "Dad, please wake up. The song isn't over. You have to hear the end. Dad!" Within 90 seconds, venue security and paramedics arrived. They'd been stationed throughout the arena for exactly this kind of emergency. They pulled Thomas out of his seat and into the aisle, laying him flat. Michael followed, crying, being held back by Caroline Martinez, who'd wrapped her arms around him. One paramedic started CPR, another prepared a defibrillator, a third called for a stretcher. This was a full code blue cardiac arrest in the middle of Eric Clapton's Wonderful Tonight.
On stage, Clapton was completely unaware. The song continued. Most of the arena continued swaying, singing along, lost in the romance of the moment. But Section 104 was frozen, watching a man die while the most beautiful song in the world played. The defibrillator charged. The paramedic called clear. Thomas's body convulsed with the shock. Once, twice, on the third shock, Thomas gasped and his eyes fluttered open. "We've got a pulse," the paramedic shouted. "Weak, but there. We need to move him now." They loaded Thomas onto the stretcher. He was conscious, but barely. His eyes found Michael, who was sobbing, being held by strangers. "Michael!" Thomas's voice was a whisper. The paramedic leaned down. "Sir, don't talk. Save your strength. We're getting you to the hospital." "My son!" Thomas tried to point. "Michael!" The head paramedic, David Chen, had been doing this job for 15 years. He knew what was happening. This man was dying. The heart attack was massive. They might keep him alive for 20 minutes, maybe 30. Maybe he'd make it to the hospital. Probably not. David made a decision. Bring the boy. Michael ran to the stretcher. His face was destroyed with crying, snot running down his face, completely shattered. Thomas reached out a shaking hand, and Michael grabbed it. "Dad, please don't leave me. Please."
Thomas tried to speak, but couldn't. The pain was overwhelming. Everything was fading. But through the chaos, through the pain, through everything, he could still hear it, faintly. Eric Clapton's voice, singing "Wonderful Tonight." The song wasn't finished yet. The song was still playing. Thomas gripped Michael's hand with whatever strength he had left. He looked at David Chen, the paramedic, and with everything he had, Thomas whispered, "Please, let me hear the rest of the song with my boy." David Chen had heard a lot of last requests in his career, calls for mothers, for wives, for God, but he'd never heard this, a dying man who just wanted to hear the end of a song with his son. David looked at his team. They had to move. Every second counted. But he looked at the father gripping his son's hand. He looked at the boy who was about to lose his dad. He looked at the stretcher positioned in the aisle with a direct sight line to the stage where Eric Clapton was still playing. David Chen made a decision that violated every protocol he'd ever learned. "Don't move him yet," David said to his team. "David, we have to go now," his partner protested. 30 more seconds, David said. "Let him have the song." And so, in the aisle of Section 104 at Madison Square Garden, while 20,000 people swayed to "Wonderful Tonight," while Eric Clapton played on completely unaware, a father and son held hands over a stretcher and listened to their song one last time. But David's partner was right. They couldn't wait. The head of venue security appeared. "What's the holdup? We need this aisle clear. You need to move now." The security chief, Robert Sullivan, was in his earpiece with the show director. "We have a medical situation in 104. Clapton needs to know. Should we stop the show?" On stage, Eric Clapton was approaching the final chorus of "Wonderful Tonight," the most beautiful, tender part, the part where the whole arena would sing along. Robert made a decision. He ran toward the stage. Clapton's road manager, standing in the wings, saw Robert sprinting toward him, looking panicked. They met at the edge of the stage, behind the amplifiers, where Clapton couldn't see. "What's wrong?" the road manager asked. "Section 104, heart attack. They're moving him out, but the guy's dying. His kid is with him. They asked to hear the rest of the song." The road manager had been with Clapton for 20 years. He knew exactly what Eric would want. He walked on stage during the performance, something he'd never done before. He went straight to Clapton and whispered in his ear. Clapton's eyes went wide. His hands faltered on the guitar for just a moment. The whole arena felt it, a slight hesitation in the music. Clapton looked out toward Section 104. He couldn't see what was happening from the stage, but he understood.
Then Eric Clapton did something he'd never done before. He stopped playing and spoke into the microphone while the band continued softly behind him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Clapton's voice echoed through the arena, "I've just learned that someone out there is having a medical emergency during this song. I'm told this is his and his son's song. They listened to it together." The crowd went silent. The band stopped playing. 20,000 people looked around, confused, concerned. "I'm going to finish this song," Clapton said, his voice thick with emotion, "and I'm going to play it for them, just for them, and I need every single one of you to be silent and let them have this moment. Can you do that for me?" The arena erupted in understanding, not applause, but a collective sound of compassion. 20,000 people going silent to honor a father and son they'd never met. Clapton looked toward section 104. "This is for you," he said, "you and your boy." Then Eric Clapton sat down on a stool center stage. He picked up his acoustic guitar, and he started Wonderful Tonight again from the beginning. But this time it was different, softer, more intimate. Just his voice and one guitar. No band, no production, just music. In the aisle of section 104, Thomas Bradley heard Eric Clapton playing just for him, playing just for Michael, their song, their moment. Thomas's hand tightened on Michael's. Michael leaned down close to his father's ear. "I love you, Dad. You're wonderful tonight, every night, forever." Thomas's lips moved. No sound came out, but Michael could read them. "You too, buddy. So wonderful." Clapton sang every word with more emotion than he'd ever sung that song before. The whole arena was silent, except for his voice. 20,000 people holding their breath, crying, watching section 104, where they knew something sacred was happening. As Clapton reached the final chorus, Thomas Bradley's eyes closed. His hand went slack in Michael's. The heart monitor on the stretcher flatlined with a sound that cut through the silence. David Chen and his team immediately resumed CPR. They rushed the stretcher toward the exit. Michael ran alongside, still holding his father's hand, crying. On stage, Eric Clapton finished the song. He played the last note, let it ring out through the silent arena. Then he stood and spoke into the microphone.
"I don't know if he's still with us," Clapton said, his own voice breaking. "But if he is, he heard his song with his son. And if he's not," Clapton paused, wiping his eyes, "if he's not, then the last thing he heard was music and love. And that's all any of us can hope for." The arena didn't applaud. There was just silence, respect. 20,000 people standing in honor of a father and son they'd never know. Thomas Bradley was pronounced dead at 9:47 p.m. on October 12, 2010, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Massive cardiac arrest. He'd been dead for 3 minutes in the arena, revived just long enough to hear the song finish, and then he was gone. Michael Bradley was 12 years old when he watched his father die to the sound of Eric Clapton playing Wonderful Tonight. The trauma of that night should have destroyed him. The song should have become unbearable, too painful to ever hear again. But something unexpected happened. Jennifer Bradley received a call 2 days after Thomas died. It was from Eric Clapton's management. Clapton wanted to meet Michael if that was okay with the family. 1 week later, Michael and Jennifer Bradley sat in a private room at Clapton's recording studio in New York. Eric Clapton walked in, sat down across from Michael, and the first thing he said was, "Tell me about your dad. Tell me about your song." For an hour, Michael told Eric Clapton about Thomas Bradley, about how Wonderful Tonight was their song, about bedtime rituals and family road trips and wedding dances, about a father who loved his son so much he spent money they didn't have to share one perfect moment together. Clapton listened to every word,
And then he said something that would change Michael's life. "The last thing your father heard on this earth was me playing your song just for him. That's not a curse, Michael. That's a gift. He died surrounded by music and love, holding your hand. Most people don't get that. Your father did. And every time you hear this song for the rest of your life, you're hearing your father's love. The song isn't about his death. It's about his life. It's about how much he loved you." Then Clapton handed Michael his personal acoustic guitar, the same one he'd used to play Wonderful Tonight that night at Madison Square Garden.
"This is yours now," Clapton said. "I want you to learn to play it on this guitar. And every time you play your song, your father will be in that music. Death doesn't end love, Michael. Music carries it forward." Michael Bradley is 26 years old now. He's a music teacher in Brooklyn. On the wall of his classroom hangs the guitar Eric Clapton gave him in 2010, and every day he plays Wonderful Tonight for his students. "This was my father's favorite song," Michael tells them. "He died listening to it. But it's not a sad song to me. It's a love song, because every time I play it, my dad is here, in the music, in the memories, in the love that doesn't die when people do." The footage of that night at Madison Square Garden, Eric Clapton playing Wonderful Tonight alone on stage while 20,000 people stood in silence, became one of the most viewed concert videos in history. Not because of the music, but because of what it represented. 20,000 strangers choosing to be silent for two people they'd never meet. A rock legend stopping his show to honor a dying father's last wish. A 12-year-old boy losing his father but gaining the knowledge that love transcends death when music carries it. Eric Clapton rarely discusses that night publicly, but in a 2015 interview, he said, "I've played Wonderful Tonight thousands of times over my career, but I only played it perfectly once, October 12, 2010, because that night it wasn't a performance, it was a prayer for a father, for a son, for all of us who are lucky enough to love someone so much that a song becomes the language of that love." Jennifer Bradley eventually remarried. Michael graduated from college. Life moved forward. But every year on October 12th, Michael goes to his father's grave and plays Wonderful Tonight on the guitar Eric Clapton gave him. And every year, he tells his father the same thing he told him that last night at Madison Square Garden. "You were wonderful tonight, Dad. Every night. Always." The story of Thomas and Michael Bradley reminds us that the most precious moments in life are the ones we share with the people we love, that music has the power to hold those moments forever, that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is simply letting them finish the song. Thomas Bradley spent $400 he couldn't afford to give his son one perfect memory. In return, he received the gift of dying surrounded by love and music, with his son by his side, and 20,000 people honoring his last wish. Most of us won't get to choose how we die, but Thomas Bradley got to die to the sound of Eric Clapton playing his and his son's song, just for them. He was wonderful that night, and every night that song plays anywhere in the world, he still is.